Welcome back to this emergency update on the Bitfarms stock and the Bitfarms as a company. What is going on? Why are we seeing a massive drawdown in the price of Bitfarms? And am I still bullish on the Bitfarm price? In today's video, we're going to be exploring all of that and more. And I would definitely recommend you guys watch my other Bitfarms videos. Just go to my channel and type in Bitfarms or type in the Cryptoviser Bitfarms here on YouTube to find all of those videos, because I have been laying out that Bitfarms is pivoting to AI for well over a year, since early 2024, maybe even into 2023. And in 2025, we really started to ramp up our coverage on Bitfarms as a company, as many of these Bitcoin mining companies were pivoting to AI. But now there's a lot of competition, and there's also a lot of conversation about the AI bubble and whether AI is in a bubble. In my view, it doesn't really matter whether AI is in a bubble or not, because these infrastructure companies like Bitfarms, like Iris Energy, like Marathon Digital, and like TeraWulf, and many others, they are the necessity. They are the data centers. They already have a lot of the infrastructure built out for these AI companies that need the energy, need the data centers, and need the compute power. But what Bitfarms is doing is very different than many of the other companies. But why is the price dropping? Well, in today's video, we're going to be exploring that and more. We're also going to be exploring some of the other Bitcoin mining companies that pivoted to AI, and also discuss what on the earnings call potentially drove the price to drop more than 50% in just a month. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. We upload every single day. Most of the time we talk about the macro environment in the financial markets, and sometimes we do deep dives like we're doing today into individual assets, cryptos, or stocks to understand whether these are good investments. Do me a favor, give the video a free thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts down below as we're going through the video, and let's get into Now, we're going to be starting right here with the Bitfarms earnings call and earnings results, because this is when people started to freak out, right? You guys have to understand the price of Bitfarms, and when you're watching this video, the price is probably going to be different than what you see on the screen, but we're talking about the macro, right? The zoomed out understanding where we are in the cycle. And so for a very long time, Bitfarms was underperforming in terms of Bitcoin mining, right? And they were pivoting to AI long before the mainstream narrative picked up on it, and probably way before you even knew what Bitfarms was. And now Bitfarms is well over $1 billion in market cap. This is in Canadian, so it's a little bit less than that, but it's still over $1 billion in market cap. You guys have to understand, we've been talking about Bitfarms since it was like $150 or $200 million market cap. So it's already basically done a 10x from there. Some of that is from some dilution. Some of that is from the infrastructure. Some of that is from, people just buying into the stock. But you guys have to understand, like, look at where the stock was. We hit a double bottom. And by the way, if you go to my YouTube community tab, just click on my YouTube channel, click on the posts tab, and just scroll down to August of 2025, where we called the double bottom. It was the clearest double bottom we've ever seen on a chart ever. I've never seen a double bottom like that. And where it was a clear W formation in the chart. And that typically means the end of a bearish trend, the end. And basically, like, most of the other Bitcoin miners were already moving to the upside at that point, but Bitfarms was kind of like on the back end. Now, a lot of that, I think, is due to where the company was from a development perspective. Also, keep in mind that it was a Canadian company, and it still is a Canadian company, even though the CEO, Ben, stated that they're going to be moving, and they've already been in the process of doing that, and that they will be a US-based company, hopefully by the middle of 2026. So just about 6 months out. That's going to open up a lot of new revenue streams and potential funding and funding mechanisms, especially from governments and stuff like that, once they do that. But we have to understand, like, where we are in the cycle, okay? And where Bitfarms is, because there was a lot of anticipation. You guys have to understand, there was a lot of anticipation that Bitfarms was going to make an announcement that, they had a deal with a hyperscaler or a deal with an AI company, similar to what we saw with Iris Energy, similar to what we saw with TeraWulf, where they signed on with Google and Microsoft or OpenAI. Now, here's the deal. They did not make that announcement in their earnings call for Q3. And I think a lot of the market was like, oh, F that, right? I'm out. But you guys have to understand, like, it is never a bad time to take profit. Did I take profit? Yes. Before the earnings call. Did many of you take profits? Probably yes. But there's also a very large majority that didn't take profits. Whenever you're up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10x, you should be taking some of that money off the table. Because these kind of moves in the market, regardless of how bullish you are, rarely occur in the stock market and stay there. Rarely. And so it's never a bad time to take profits. You can always buy back in. And if your thesis is that the price is going to continue to go up forever and that everything is bullish, there's never a bad time to buy in. But we on this channel, we look at the market very objectively and really look at the psychological market chart, right? Because as quick as you can go up, once you're past the euphoria and complacency phase, which is right here on the screen, this is the psychology of market cycle chart. Once you're past these top two areas of the market, you go straight down. And what I was seeing was all of the AI companies, right? NVIDIA, Palantir, and the AI infrastructure companies like Iris Energy, we're going to talk about those in a few minutes, Marathon Digital, those were already starting to drop. And so even if they made an announcement at Bitfarms, if Bitfarms said, we have Google on board, they're going to be renting out our data centers, that doesn't mean that the stock price is going to continue to go up or stay level, right? Because the macro trend is that the AI bubble may have popped and that a lot of these stocks kind of were over exuberant and people were taking profits out of the market. And so at a macro level, okay, there was no announcement and the overall ecosystem of AI is starting to correct or pull back a little bit. But this is an opportunity. Why is it an opportunity? Well, we want to buy low and sell high, right? And so if the price is going down because of a macro correction and they don't have any announcements yet, well, what does the future hold? Hopefully announcements, right? Because what if they made an announcement? If they said, we have Google on board, the price could have still went down. Buy the rumor, sell the news. The rumor and the speculation is that they were going to have a deal. Well, they didn't announce a deal and the stock went down. It went down before the non-announcement regardless. But what if they made an announcement? That was the news. Buy the rumor, sell the news. It probably would have gone down regardless. And so let's dive a little bit deeper into their revenue and their earnings. And so this is their earnings of results. They have a revenue of $69 million from continued operations and $14 million from discontinued operations. They successfully closed a $588 million convertible note offering. And this is the big announcement, right? Well, one of the big announcements is that they announced plans to convert their Washington state data center to support these GPUs with advanced liquid cooling. And so let's go line by line and understand exactly what they're working on. So Bitfarms announced plans for the conversion of their Washington site from Bitcoin mining to HPC high power compute and AI workloads, targeting completion as early as December of 2026. So we're 1 year out, 1 year. So they can't even really roll out or get any hyperscalers to sign on board because they don't even have this ready. The site will feature validated reference designs compatible with these GPUs, modular infrastructure for phased deployment and faster scalability, state-of-the-art liquid cooling, and they signed a fully binding agreement for $128 million to supply all of the critical IT equipment and building materials for 18 megawatt of gross capacity. They received positive indications on viability of converting their Panther Creek, I believe that's Pennsylvania, initial service agreement of 60 megawatts to a firm ESA, something else service agreement of 60 megawatts to expand the provision of a firm power to 410 megawatts. And remember, Bitfarms is doing things very different than these other companies like Iris Energy. Now, we're going to talk about Iris Energy and also Marathon Digital in just a minute, but effectively, Iris Energy, they have these deals with Microsoft, but they own the GPUs. They own the computers that power these AIs. These GPUs have very short lifespans, the same way that Bitcoin mining machines have very short lifespans, because by next year, there's a Bitcoin mining machine that's more powerful that can do better things than these mining machines. And the year after that, there's going to be new mining machines. And the year after that, there's going to be new mining machines. It's the same way like your new iPhone can do more things, not that much, but some new things than the previous version, and the version before that, and the version before that. And if you have an iPhone that's, a decade old, it no longer has support. So you can't even use that phone anymore. It's the same thing with these GPUs, same thing with these Bitcoin mining machines. The longer you're using them, the longer they're in production, the less valuable they are because there's newer machines that can do better things. And so what Bitfarms is doing is Bitfarms doesn't want to own the GPUs. They want to own the power. They want to own the fiber optic connectivity so that if these AI companies want to use their facilities, which they need the energy, and energy is very hard to produce because of red tape, because of how long it takes, many different reasons, right? And so Bitfarms is expanding their energy capacity. That way, when these data centers need to get built, they need the power. So regardless if they need the GPUs or not, they need the power. So if they need the power, they're going to rent it from somebody who has the power. And because Bitfarms is so ahead of these other companies from a power generation and power growth perspective, right? They call it the pipeline of what they are going to be able to expand to. This puts Bitfarms in a much it kind of like they're skipping the line where it doesn't matter that they have the GPUs or not, because if the companies need this, they're gonna outsource to or rent the power from Bitfarms. And this is very important to keep in mind. Anyway, moving right along, they completed the acquisition of the Sharon, Pennsylvania property, previously operated under a 17-year lease. The campus is currently operating 30 megawatts of Bitcoin mining capacity, which will be committed now to HPC and AI. The additional 80 megawatt substation is expected to come online by year-end 2026, bringing the anticipated total to 110 megawatts. And then they talk about their Macquarie credit facility. We're not going to get too deep into that. They talk about some of their executive team moving. This is also really important. They announced the second principal office in New York City and the commitment to convert to U.S. accounting principles by the year end this year, 2025, as part of their broader strategy to re-domicile to the U.S. That's important to understand as well. And they also exited most of their non-North American facilities, right? They sold the Argentina and Paraguay operations, and they bought Stronghold, which was a US-based Bitcoin mining facility. They bought that earlier in 2025. So the updated energy portfolio consists of 2.1 gigawatts of power infrastructure in the US and Canada, including 341 megawatts of energized capacity, 440 megawatts of secured contract growth capacity, and 1.36 gigawatts of capacity under application, meaning they're just waiting for the approvals, which I think will be coming soon. And these approvals of more energy capacity potentially is going to be more of a bullish catalyst than actual agreements with Microsoft, which is what Iris Energy is, gloating about. And so that's kind of like what the future holds. As of November 12th, 2025, the company had a total liquidity of approximately $814 million, comprised of about $600 million in cash and $177 million in Bitcoin. And so they still are mining Bitcoin, not as much as they were. They're still holding Bitcoin, which I think is a good idea, especially because they have cash on the side besides the Bitcoin. And so from a financial standpoint, the company is doing fine. It's doing good. But why is the price going down? Well, let's understand what some of the other investors are looking at. The Pigeon 941 on X, many people follow him. 83,000 followers. He said accumulating Bitcoin miners who have realized they should own the power source. And he references Marathon Digital because Marathon Digital's CEO says that miners without power control won't survive the next Bitcoin halving. He said rising energy costs and a 50% block reward cut will wipe out profit margins. Now, I agree with this, and Marathon Digital has made a flip into AI as well. But the issue with Marathon Digital is they made the pivot to AI too late, in number one. And number two, they hold 50,000 plus Bitcoin. I think it's like 53,000 Bitcoin. So their stock price and valuation are still very closely tied to Bitcoin price and Bitcoin movements, regardless of what they're doing in the AI space. Iris Energy, on the other hand, right, which we've talked about, they're the ones who got agreements with Google and Microsoft. Their valuation is based on a lot of question marks because the difference between Marathon Digital owning the energy, Bitfarms owning the energy, is that Iris Energy, they don't, I think they own some of the energy, but again, they're in Texas. In Texas, they take the excess energy off of the grid to use for Bitcoin mining or now AI. But the other issue with Iris Energy is that Iris Energy not only owns the data centers, but they own the computers, the GPUs in them. And so as those are depreciating in value, they own that. They have all of the liability. And so these deals with Microsoft and Google may sound great, and people may say, well, why does Bitfarms not have these agreements? It's because these companies like Microsoft and Google, they don't want to take the risk. And with Bitfarms and probably Marathon Digital, they have to take the risk. They have to buy the GPUs. They have to service the GPUs. They have to depreciate the GPUs and buy new ones every few years. With Iris Energy, they don't have to do that because Iris Energy has to do that. So Iris Energy is basically making no money. On paper, it looks like they're making a lot, billions of dollars from their agreements with Microsoft and Google. But when you remove the depreciation of these machines, the servicing of the machines, everything that could possibly go wrong with these machines, and by the way, if Microsoft and Google pull out of these agreements, Iris Energy is left with these machines and nobody to use them. And so all of the risk is on Iris Energy. Jim Chanos has called this out. Other influencers and well-known market analysts have called this out, and we've called this out right here on the channel. And so these things are already priced in. This is why I think that we're starting to see Iris Energy's stock valuation go down 35% from its local top in the beginning of November after all these agreements were made. And generally speaking, most of these AI pivot companies like Marathon Digital, like TeraWolf, like Bitfarms has come down substantially. But again, this is why when you see these major peaks like this, right? This is Wall Street, they're just buying. They just want to own the company. They don't care at what valuation they're buying at. So they make these very large buy orders. They push the price up and everybody gets bullish because they see all these market orders coming in and they're like, whoa, I got to buy. I'm not selling because there are all these buy orders, but that is exit liquidity. That's literally what it is. And I think that most of the drawdown is macro, okay, meaning the whole AI sector is starting to correct to the downside. I think the crypto market is moving into a bear market, potentially the macro AI companies as well. But the thing is, AI is not going anywhere, and the demand for energy is not going anywhere. And so when we see large dips like this, there is going to be opportunity. Now, I'm not saying right away, okay, because I do think that we still have more to fall. Macro, right? Everything all together. Because I'm still bullish on Bitfarms. Don't get it twisted. I've taken profits, but I'm still bullish on Bitfarms. Very bullish on Bitfarms, in fact. And I still own Bitfarms, but there is going to be more of a pullback across the board. Marathon Digital, NVIDIA, Palantir, OpenAI, Valuation, all these companies are pulling back. And they're going to continue to pull back for some time. I don't know how long. We just have to continue to reassess where we are in the markets. But what Bitfarms is doing, they still have money, they're still expanding, they still own the energy, they still don't have any agreements or contracts with any big hyperscalers, which is also very bullish. Because now Iris Energy, they're locked into this contract. Marathon Digital locked into a contract. TeraWolf locked into a contract. Bitfarms is a free agent. So now if there's less supply because Microsoft and Google did all these agreements with all these companies, so they've taken away some of the supply out of the market, but the demand is still very high for energy, for data centers, for fiber optic network capabilities. And that's what Bitfarms has. And so Bitfarms can charge whatever the hell they want. They don't own the GPUs. They're not going to own the GPUs. And so they have all the cards in their hands. Where companies like Iris Energy, they don't. They've given the cards to the people they made an agreement with so that they can make an agreement. And I think that the market is going to price those negatively when the market starts to realize, they own all the liability, they own all the risk. Microsoft can walk away at any point, and now Iris Energy has all these machines and nobody to use them. And that is a huge risk, especially if we are going into a bear market. And so what does this mean for Bitfarms? Well, I think that makes things even more bullish for Bitfarms because Bitfarms isn't worried about any of that. They're not worried about the risk. They're continuing to grow. They're continuing to get institutional interest in growing their energy capacity. Not only growing their energy capacity, owning the energy capacity. And being an energy company, I mean, what energy company has ever not done good? Especially when energy demand is at all-time highs and the supply is not at all-time highs. This is where I think Bitfarms is different than the rest. And they're not tied down with a contract. They're not tied down to Bitcoin mining. They still are Bitcoin mining for some, revenue. And as a lot of these other companies fully pivot away from Bitcoin mining, Bitfarms is not. They're pivoting away from it, but not fully. And so they're still going to have revenue stream, bull market or bear market, but they're also diversifying their portfolio by getting into the energy game, getting into the fiber optic connectivity game, getting into the HPC and AI game. And once we do form a bottom in the macro AI sense, this is going to give these companies, they're going to start racing again, right? When we do hit a bottom at some point, and there's probably more money that flows into the economy through money printing, through government stimulus, or whatever the situation is, that money is going to go because they're going to still be racing effectively because AI is not going anywhere. It may pull back a little bit in terms of this funding and the over exuberance in the market around that, but AI is not going anywhere. They're still going to need the compute. They're still going to need the energy. And this is where Bitfarms, I think, is going to win. And this puts us in line exactly when they are planning on redomiciling in the US. According to the CEO, Ben, he said that they're going to be redomiciling in the US in the middle of 2026. And what's important about the middle of 2026? Well, in the middle of 2026, number one, if they're redomiciling in the US, we also know we're going to have a new Federal Reserve chairman around the same time. New Federal Reserve chairman could potentially mean much lowering of rates, more money printing. This could also be towards the bottom of the market for some of these categories of the market that are downtrending right now. Because remember, downtrends don't last for 1 or 2 days. A lot of people are like, Iris Energy came down 30%. We're at the bottom, buy the dip. And I'm like, no. The bottom is much, much lower. Again, if you look at the psychological market charts, much lower, potentially before the bull run even started, lower. And so this could take months, maybe even a year to get to the bottom of the market. But I think it's going to be more accelerated because of the desire of the market to keep bidding these companies up and to keep expanding the AI infrastructure and AI usage. And so that potentially could accelerate a year downtrend to 6 months or 7 month downtrend. And that would put us into the middle of the year. So if they're re-domiciling in the US, we may have more money printing. We're going to have a new Federal Reserve chairman. We're probably going to have more quantitative easing around that time as well. Well, it's setting Bitfarms up to be in a great position to take on massive, massive agreements and lease contracts and partnerships with some of these companies, which some of these other companies like Iris Energy, they're already locked out of because of their agreements with their current partners like Microsoft and Google. And Bitfarms is not there yet. And so although we have seen massive drawdown in the price, right, over 50% from that peak of over $6, we're still up significantly from the bottom of the market, from that 70-cent range. We're still up 2.5x. Could we go much lower? Of course we could. But at some point, we're going to have a great opportunity to buy that dip. Because again, this is the lowest valued company from a market cap perspective in the AI and HPC space. And as I just read, they have over 2 gigawatts of power pipeline that could be in production by the end of next year. This is way ahead of even some of the mega companies like Meta and Google and what they're building on their own. And so are companies going to need it? Yes. Are they going to use it? Absolutely. And are we going to see agreements? Probably. Like I would say like 90% we will see some type of partnership or agreement or leasing or something like that over the next couple of years. Is it going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. But it's going to happen. They're not just building all of this energy and fiber optic infrastructure just for fun. Wall Street is not buying into this stock just for fun. They're doing it for the future prospects of what this company can potentially put out. And that is what I'm bullish on. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to take profits. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to trade the stock. But it means that I'm bullish on the future of Bitfarms. Probably more than any other Bitcoin mining company that pivoted to AI and HPC infrastructure that there is. I want to know what you guys think. Are you bullish? What do you agree or disagree with my analysis? And do you think that this is just a macro downtrend for the AI bubble that may have popped? And when do you think that bubble popping will be over and we will reach a bottom? Let me know down below in the comments of this video. Don't forget to check out my other Bitfarms videos. Give the video a free thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss a new video. Sometimes we do deep dives like we did today. And sometimes we just talk about the macro financial markets and understand where the markets are and where the markets are going. See you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.